She invented the airplane ambulance. She was the first female bomber pilot in history. She fought in World War I disguised as a man. She took part in the resistance of World War II, was the first to survive crossing the English Channel in a balloon. She worked all her life as a journalist, spent years in North Africa, and invented metal skis.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wonderful. She's amazing.
Whoa. One thing I cannot tell you, though, is how to pronounce her name.
Yes.
It is Marie. And the last name, I'm going to take a crack at it. Marvingt. Right? You think?
I think so.
Maybe I got it wrong. We're going to find out right now because the lady who knows all about her is on the phone. Her name is Rosalie Maggio. Boy, I'm having a hard time with names today. Rosalie is an historian, a researcher, a biographer, fluent in French. She is featured in Ms. Magazine, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle. It's such an honor to have her on our show today. Rosalie, I so apologize for mispronouncing your name and Marie's last name. Good morning to you, Rosalie. Good morning.
Thank you. Marie and I thank you, both of us. And we don't care how you pronounce our name as long as you call us.
So start with yours. How do you pronounce your last name?
Well, I say Maggio.
Maggio. Okay, like Joe DiMaggio, right?
Yep, like that.
And
yep.
And Marie's last name, how do you pronounce that?
Well, it's in French, it's Marvingt, and you kind of swallow the last three consonants, or you can just sort of cough at the end and say Marie, and whatever. What I'm telling people is if you want to Google her or something, look up Fiancee of Danger, because she's the only person that was ever called that. So you'll find her that way, because the last name is tough. It's true.
And pronounce it again, Marvingt? Just like that? Marvingt?
Yeah.
Robin, you try it.
That's it.
Marvingt.
Yeah, you got it.
We got it? Okay.
Great.
Robin speaks French.
No.
Well, a little bit.
No, I'm not.
She knows how to say, where's the bathroom?
Yeah, that's it.
For the listeners, I want to spell Marie's last name just for the listeners. It's Marvingt, just so you know, if you're looking that up as well. Rosalie, it's an honor to have you on our show.
Thank you for having us. I always think of it as us because it's Marie that really is saying, you know what, you forgot what I did? And so I'm just her, her dog's body.
So let's start there. Why did we forget her? What happened?
That's what kept me going after I discovered that she was not a hoax, which I thought she was. That kept me going for a long time. Several reasons. Okay, the easiest one is she was a woman. They didn't keep records of women in those days. They weren't in the record books. And they weren't doing her kind of thing. Second thing, she lived too long, which is something you don't usually think about. But she died at 88. And we kind of remember the people who went down in flames of glory in their 30s or their 20s or something like that. We remember those people. But when you become an old woman, and she was very poor in her later years, and she biked. She never had any transportation but a bicycle. So she'd bike around town. In fact, at 86, she strapped on a backpack and biked from the east of France all the way to Paris. That afternoon, she flew a jet-engine helicopter. So
wow.
That's all we count.
But this little old lady with a squashed black hat on her head, and an old black coat that used to belong to the mayor because she got it at a thrift shop. And when she'd say, yeah, I took a balloon across the North Sea, they're like, yeah, right. And so, she kind of outlived her days of glory. The third reason is interesting. The woman did too much. Because, we remember Amelia Earhart is the patron saint of pilots. Florence Nightingale, you say nurse and you think Florence Nightingale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You say sports and you think Babe Didrikson Zaharias. Marie had no adherents, people that say, yeah, she's our woman. Because, in fact, when I was trying to sell this manuscript for years, they'd say, Rosa, it's just too much. Why don't you concentrate on her as a pilot, or on her as a, fighting in the war,
mm-hmm.
or on her as an inventor? And I always refused because the whole point of Marie is that she did it all. But I think that's hard. I mean, even later today, if you're trying to tell somebody what she did, well, you guys are you might remember. Me, I have to kind of have writing up my arm to remember everything.
Oh, me too.
Really? Well, I think she did too much, and it's just too hard to grasp that. And then no group took her up. like with Florence and Amelia. By the way, she knew Amelia. They talked together in Chicago, and I have a picture of them together and so on. But so that's another reason that she was forgotten. Another one yet is that she was thought to be a hoax. Several prominent people of her day were like, well, yeah, that's kind of a myth, Marvingt. That's the Marvingt myth. It's, she didn't really. I mean, she did a few things, yeah, but, and so that kind of influenced people. You'd look at it and you'd say, yeah, well, we'll go someplace else. So there were a number of reasons, and I don't really know the best reason why she's forgotten.
So, was she in France or was she in America or somewhere else?
She was in France. No, she was born and lived in France, but she traveled all over, and she spent a couple of years in the United States. She traveled to airports and air museums, and she gave. In fact, I'm from California, and her copper wings were signed by her in the 1930s out here in Riverside Inn at the Mission Inn. Anyway, and her wings are, with Eddie Rickenbacker's, Amelia Earhart's, John Glenn, and there she is, Marie Marvingt. They knew who she was in her day, you see. She was absolutely, in fact, every day I can tell you where that woman was almost every day because the newspapers followed her like crazy. She was so well known. In fact, hey, have you ever heard of The Perils of Pauline?
Oh, yeah, that movie. I saw the movie, and it was a pretty funny movie.
Is that her?
Isn't that funny? Well, it was based on Marie's life. Pauline was always in danger. And many of the scenes in Pauline, she's up in a balloon in one. It was just like Marie's. She did everything Marie did. She also refused to marry. She said, Pauline said, no, I'm not going to marry until I've had some adventures. Well, Marie was like that. Point is, The Perils of Pauline, were based on Marie, and people had been used to reading about her in the paper, so it was no big surprise that this, fictional woman came along and did what Marie did, and it was real popular. So, she wasn't.
Was Pauline like her middle name, or did some writer just decide to change her name?
Well, they changed her name, but you know what Pauline's last name is? Marvin. Pauline.
Oh, okay.
Is that a riot? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the people that did it were basing on her, and that is a tribute to her. They just called her Pauline Marvin. So, yeah, good question. But anyway, Pauline will tell you what Marie's life. It was all the time cliffhangers, and that's what Marie did. Once she dove off a dirigible into a canal in Venice. Her nickname,
man.
Yeah, Fiancee of Danger was Daredevil Marie. She somersaulted on a galloping horse, the first recorded person to do that. I'm sure other people did it, but she was recorded as doing
I'm
it.
going to try that one, Robin.
There you go.
I got to find something that some of these people have done that I can do at least one of them.
She gives you a total inferior I think that's why I was drawn to her, because I am so not. I do not want to take a bath out of my helmet, in the army, or, she'd walk for days in the wilderness, and she was quite an adventurer in hiking, and man, she had to. No, that's not me, and so I was kind of fascinated by her. I like to sit at home with a book and.
So, did you do that? Did you analyze your own self to say, why am I fascinated by Marie?
I had to, and part of it, I hate to tell you, but Marie has been at my back. That woman drives me, and I know she's supposed to be dead and everything, but she just, every time I put this project, look, you said I'm not really a biographer. I've written 22 books and no other biography. I didn't want to do this. I tried to give it to other people, and I don't know, okay, the thing about Marie and I is I went to school for a year. I missed Marie by 1 year and 9 months. I went to school over there in Nancy, and she had died a year and 9 months before. But when I discovered her, I'm like, hey, I know that town. I know people there. I know stuff. I can do this. And so I went back a lot to do research. So for whatever reason, I don't think that had to do with it, but Marie has kind of kept me at this. I would have put it down a long time ago. But so why I'm drawn to it, I'm pushed into it.
Did you write it first in French?
Yes, I did. I did that in 1990, and I thought the French people would be, she's as forgotten there as she is anywhere.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
When I went I went over in 1983. She died in 1963, and she was so poor that they just rented her a burial plot for 20 years. The people took up a little...
Rented it?
You know, a few friends. They rented it. So in 1963, it was her concession, as they call it, was up. And Marie was about to get put in a little box and put in the wall, you know, where people went when they couldn't afford the big plot. And so I was there in 1963, and somebody talked me into talking to the newspaper, because I thought, well, I'm just... Anyway, they did a big article about how an American was trying to resurrect Marie. And when the people found out that she was about to lose her place in the cemetery, they're like, wait a minute, I kind of remember her. And wasn't she something? And anyway, so now she only gets there to stay there till, I think, 2028 or something. I forget how many years they bought her. We got to take up another collection and buy her so she can rest.
Yeah, I mean,
we have to buy her a permanent plot.
Is that the way all cemeteries are in France? You have to rent it out?
I don't know about all cemeteries. There's a lot of that because land is scarce, and you know, if they can't bury everybody in the ground without. So that concession is fairly common, and they figured, you know, 20 years from now, nobody's going to know who that was anyway. They thought, I don't know, but so when I went back in '63, it was just it was fortuitous because it did save her from getting tossed out, and we put at the end of the article, if you have any information about Marie, send it to Rosalie. So that's how I got a lot of material about her. People. But, you know, still she wasn't very remembered. Very few people, they were older. And so I found them all, anybody who'd ever talked to her, you know, and interviewed them. But that was in '83, and some of those people are dead now. So, yeah, it's sad that she was forgotten because she was a marvel. And she was so much fun. I kind of like her. She had a lot of spirit, and she was fun, and she laughed, and... You know, she was, yeah.
Was she one of the founders of the Tour de France, and she rode in the first one?
No. In fact, she didn't belong there. She applied to enter in I think they started in 1906 or something. So by the time this came out, she was a great biker. She'd won a lot of long-distance bike races, and she was an excellent biker. So when the Tour de France came up, she put in her registration, and they said, sorry, men only. And she was so mad. Well, and this is the thing about Marie. She just never took no. So she went 15 minutes behind the field. And that year in 1908, I think 114 entrants, and of them, 36 finished the course. And she would have been 37. And
wow.
I think by her time, she would have done pretty well. But she was tough. In the same way, as soon as World War I broke out, boy, the minute there was talk of war, she went and registered for the Air Force because she was a pilot.
So she pretended to be a man with the Tour de France?
No, she just went as herself.
Just went to...
but she didn't go with the field because she wasn't allowed to. So she waited till they started, and then she came after.
15 minutes later.
Yeah, and then in the war too, she wanted to fly, and they said nope, no women. Well, she ended up not only flying but bombing 2 enemy air bases, in which she got a medal for.
But they thought she was a man in that, right?
Well, in the war, she said, okay, here's what happened. She was sitting in a mess, an army mess, and she heard some infantry talking. They're like, yeah, those pilots, they think they're such hot stuff. So they wouldn't survive a day in the trenches. They're just wusses, you know. And they were talking like this and dissing pilots. And Marie's sitting there listening. She said, wait a minute, I'm a pilot.
World War I.
World War I,
okay.
Yeah. So she thought, I'm going to show them. So she got, with the help of a friend and with actually Marshal Foch helped her. She was disguised as a man, and this one friend, they put her in his battalion so he could look out for her if anything trouble came. Anyway, so she fought for 47 days, and then she was injured, and they found out she was a woman, and they kicked her out. But wow. Marshal Foch, I think to keep her from causing war, they sent her then to the Alpine troops in another part of France during World War I, and where she skied up provisions to the soldiers' bivouac, you know, up in the mountains, and then she would ski out any wounded, because she was an excellent. She won 20 gold medals.
Wow, she had somebody on her back when she skied?
Well, no, they would pull them on a, you know, like a trailer and stuff, but they'd ski them out because, you know, this is the Alps in World War I, and it was primitive. But anyway, so she did that. She also, during World War I, okay, so she bombed, she fought in the front lines, she did the and she did a little espionage. See, she was known all over, so she could go anywhere, and she was giving talks at that time to promote the ambulance airplane. And so they'd let her in, and they say, look, you can't say anything political or, because it's wartime. But that didn't stop her from meeting with people after her talks and stuff, and they think she gathered a lot of information. And then, as you said, in World War II, she did get a medal for her work in the resistance.
So she did get recognized by her government.
Yeah. Oh, yes, the government. In fact, all this is government resource.
Okay.
The government gave her. They said she bombed these 2 air bases. She fought in the war. And then she was also a registered nurse, which is how she came up with the ambulance airplane, because she'd been a nurse, a Red Cross nurse, for a long time, and she's a pilot. The irony, first of all, 2 ironies. World War I, when she wanted to fly, she had trained most of the pilots. She was what they call a godmother. She actually taught flying to these young men that were flying World War I. Secondly, they said, no, you can't fly, but we'll take your plane. They took her airplane to the war.
Oh, my gosh.
And they wouldn't let her fly. So she got up anyway and did her bombing and another few other flights, reconnaissance or whatever she could get her hands on. But the government recognized her, and so she was a busy woman, and nothing was uninteresting to her. She loved novelty. Boy, as soon as something, like, she had one of the first bikes. Her dad was a real forward-looking guy. I marvel at him too. He was a sports champion in Alsace-Lorraine at the time. Swimming and billiards were his sports, and he was a champion. So he looked forward to passing on his love of sports to his children. Well, first, he and his wife had 3 boys. Each one died in infancy. Then came Marie. Then came another boy, and actually they called him the second Eugene. One of the first ones was named Eugene, which I thought was, I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to be called the second anybody. But anyway, he was the second Eugene. So, but he was sickly, and he died of heart trouble when he was 18. So here's this guy. He's a champion. He just loves sports, man. He can't get enough of it. And what he's got is Marie. Well, by the time, she says she was swimming before she was walking. I don't know, but so he noticed that this kid had super energy, was real cool. He took her swimming. By the time she was 4, she apparently could swim 4 kilometers in the river, downriver. And then he took her mountain climbing. He taught her billiards. He taught her everything. First time a bike was seen in town, oh, Daddy, I got to have one. He bought her a bike, So and you know what? When she was only 14, he let her go to the circus. There was a local circus, half the year. Go take lessons in trapeze and bareback riding and lion taming. Let her go by herself. So, I mean, this was not a normal guy in the 1900s, early.
Really?
Or 1800s. So, yeah, he was part of her.
Rosalie, where are you? Where are you calling from?
North of Los Angeles.
Okay. Well, we're in Florida. I don't know if you know where we are.
Sure.
And this morning there was a rocket that took off not far from here, Cape Canaveral, and it was a test. And the news indicated that the actual rocket that this is testing for will carry the first woman to the moon. So it's kind of connects with what we have in the news today, talking about Marie. Can I ask, maybe this is a weird question, but every once in a while you have said she keeps bothering me. Do you feel like her spirit is with you?
Well, a little bit, not in any woo-woo way, but just this project was not something I would have chosen, and I have put it in my bottom drawer several times, and I've run into nothing but rejection, and something keeps me going, and I suspect it's, I feel a little nudges from Marie, I have to say.
Nothing but rejection. That is too disappointing to hear that. I'm guessing you mean the publishers, that they don't see that the general public wants to. We're craving these kinds of stories. I mean, for in one aspect, just to see women in history that we've forgotten about, we need to remember them, and you've done that. That's an amazing thing. But just humanity in general, we need to know about people who defeated the odds and had a life that they embraced in spite of rejection.
Absolutely. No, well, when I do, they say, well, but she's French. And I say, well, yes, I know that. And because American publishers want American people, then they say, well, she's been forgotten. I said, yes, I know that too. And they say, well, good luck. And, they said, and many of them said, I don't think I can sell this story. And I felt very bad personally because I think if I could tell it right, couldn't I sell it? Because I think Marie's story, all by itself, I don't even have to be there. Marie's story is, I think, interesting.
Just with what you told us so far, it's just an amazing story to me.
Oh, and there are many little twists and turns and things that, no, the woman was astounding. I liked her really well as an old woman because, see, you didn't get money for sports in those days, or you got gold medals and so on, and you didn't get paid. Her journalism was the only income she had. After her dad died in 1916, they had been living on his pension from the AT&T, or the telephone system, and then that was nothing. She had no income. But the woman had this valiance about her. She dazzled people with one good black gown and one string of pearls.
That would dazzle me.
You're easily dazzled.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am easily dazzled. Rosalie, it's such a great conversation. I love everything you've said. I can't wait to read the book. Marie Marvingt. Am I saying it right? Yeah. What was the second part of it? The
fiancé of danger.
Fiancé of danger.
Yeah.
All right.
She didn't have a man in her life. They needed her to have a man in her life, so they gave her a fiancé. So.
Oh, okay. Well, she's not a bad looking lady. I did find her picture.
Oh, she's beautiful.
She's a very attractive lady, unless I'm looking at the wrong picture.
Very adventurous.
Let's see. I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website you'd like to recommend?
Well, yeah, MarieMarvingt.com. It's just all one word, her name, MarieMarvingt.com, if you can spell her name. And that's got a lot of stuff on it. And I also have that MarieMarvingt.fr if you want to look really cool at your workplace with the French stuff on your screen. And then my own website, RosalieMaggio.com, has a little bit about her too. But she's, she's coming. You guys are pioneers in bringing her out to people. You're going to see her name.
I believe you're right. I believe you're right.
And I thank you both for letting her and me on this morning.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? Marie, if you're listening, thank you. Rosalie, I know you're listening. Thank you.
You're wonderful, Rosalie.
For those who wanted to spell, Marie's last name is Marvingt. That's the person who's written about. The person who did the writing is Rosalie Maggio, Maggio. Rosalie, thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
Merci à vous aussi. Bon revoir.
That's about all I can say. Merci. Rosalie, thank you. We'll be right back.
They also say children were being held apart from parents in poor conditions.
No child ever has to suffer for the benefits of another.